We already had 6 kids. I thought they were going to look and be like, wow, they already got a bunch of kids. My child's never going to get any attention. But 2 birth moms chose us essentially on the same day. So it was like, oh, okay, we're going to adopt 2 kids. And it's absolutely amazing. You know, I couldn't imagine my life without our 2 adopted sons. People ask me all the time, is there a difference between your biological kids and your adopted kids, how you feel about them? None whatsoever. But, you know, how Scott and I talk about it is, look, we know what the conversation is around abortion right now, and with Roe v. Wade being overturned, and it seems like that a lot of times the discussion is reduced to this false binary where it's like, well, you either got to have an abortion or you're sentenced to single motherhood for the rest of your life, and there's a third option, adoption, and it's beautiful. I know that I haven't witnessed a greater act of love in my life than the birth mothers who placed their children up for a loving adoption and chose our family. And I know that there's literally thousands, tens or hundreds of thousands of couples out there praying that somebody chooses them, you know, for their child. And I think, geez, if you're a woman who's unexpectedly pregnant, and if you place your child up for adoption, you could literally be the answer to somebody's prayers. Right. And that's, you know, if you talk about, you know, our time on earth here is very brief, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's very brief. But if you could at one point do one thing in your life and answer somebody's prayers, that's a pretty amazing thing to be able to do. So Scott and I really want to elevate the conversation around adoption, make sure that, hey, this is the third option, if you will, that rarely gets talked about, but also streamline it, make it more affordable, make it easier, because it's a beautiful thing. And I think you talk to the millions of families that have been fortunate enough to adopt, and they would tell you that it's a blessing that's really hard to even articulate.
You know, when you talk about adoption and how much you love your sons and that you don't differentiate, I think that shows your heart. And I think this is a part of the conversation that never gets talked about when we're talking about adoption. Our human experience has been that blood is what matters the most, right? That's been an average human experience. And I think that is a very poor way to look at it. I think, as you said, you love your sons that are adopted and not biological as much as you love your biological children. And I think that speaks to your character and to your heart. That's a decision that I think is hard for some people to imagine, but being able to do that. So, you know, can you kind of tell me, where does that come from? Why did you have this desire to not only help yourself? Because, you know, let's be honest, when you adopt children, it's because you desire to have more children. But it means that you have to take on someone else's genetic, you know, offspring. Where's that come from, man?
I mean, I don't know. I grew up in St. Paul in the 80s and just sort of had this, I would say it's an idyllic childhood. I mean, there was tons of families. It was just real middle class. It was kind of one of those deals where you just went outside and there's always a ton of kids. It was safe. And everybody just kind of watched out for everybody, you know. Other parents would yell at you, you know, if you were doing something wrong. I don't know. I just had a great childhood. And I think maybe that's why I love kids so much. I'm also realized when I was a kid, there was a lot of people that took an interest in me, teachers, coaches that, you know, didn't necessarily have to, but kind of went the extra mile for whatever reason. And so it just feels like, you know, that's what I'm supposed to do. Right. Like, you know, when you're a child, your whole world construct kind of gets formed. And so to me, this is just what you're kind of supposed to do. It wasn't like a conscious decision that I made. That's just how the world works to me.
You know, kind of, you know, that same mentality that you care so much about kids. And obviously you believe that there's a set of values that are important for society to have because you started a school. You and another gentleman. And so can you kind of tell me why? Like, why did you want to start a school?
Yeah, I mean, education's part of my story. I was early on, I wasn't a great student. They thought I might have a learning disability. Turns out I was just really lazy. And I had a teacher who kind of said, he's just lazy. We'll fix him. And she did. And education was a great path for me. I mean, I was built kind of for the education system. I was just blessed with the ability to be able to memorize a lot of information and regurgitate it, which when I went to school, when you guys went to school, that was kind of the skill to have.
Yeah, that is a skill.
Now we've all got supercomputers in our pockets, so it's a little bit less important. But to that point, my family, we moved around a little bit, went to a lot of schools, and I sort of saw like, are we really, to me, school should be preparing kids for life. Mm-hmm. Are we preparing kids for life? Because all I ever hear us talking about is how we're preparing kids for college. And then what? Like, what does college prepare you for? To become an employee somewhere? I look at it as we're all entrepreneurs of our own lives. We all have different skills. I mean, if I could, say we're all made in the image and likeness of God, mm-hmm. and He's got a specific plan for each and every one of us. My path is not the same as yours or yours. And it kind of seemed like with education, we were kind of saying like, we're going to treat all these kids the same. We're going to get them all to college. And it was like, no, you got to, we've got to recognize the differences, different talents, and prepare kids not just for college. A lot of them won't go to college, but prepare them more for life.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to start a school, a faith-based school that was also, though, tweaked the education model and started to develop a lot of these skills that our kids are lacking these days, like resiliency, communication skills, right? Because the kids now in high school, they don't know life without a smartphone, mm-hmm. Being able to collaborate, work within a team, those types of things versus, what's the capital of Argentina? Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of this idea that I had and partnered up with another gentleman who sort of knew about the nuts and bolts of starting a school. He had done it before, and it just kind of happened. And Unity Catholic High School, now it's in our 4th year. We're going to have our first graduating class this year, and it's been an amazingly fun and rewarding project to be a part of.
What was your thought process from changing from the education side of it to pivoting now to politics?
It's a great question. It keeps me up some nights too at 3 a.m. I'm saying, why did I do this? No, I'm just kidding. I think like a lot of people is concerned with everything that went on during COVID. Is
that kind of when you decided, okay, I got to get involved?
Yeah, I think I got really mad like a lot of people. And it's like, well, I got to do something. Okay, what can I do? But what really just bothered me was I felt like the way that these government policies or edicts that were coming down, how it was hurting our kids, how it was hurting businesses. During the closed churches, it was just like, I was like, this just is not right. I just saw a lot of people being hurt, and there's a lot of people that I don't want to say they can't do anything about it, but they might not be able to stand up for themselves. Or I knew that I had a platform a little bit, so it was like, what can I do? And it just so happened about a year and a half ago, I was on an airplane, and Scott Jensen was on that airplane, and I didn't know who Scott Jensen was, but my wife did. And she told me, oh, that's Scott Jensen. And so I met him, and we went and had lunch a couple days later, and I got to know him. And I said, well, here's a man of character. Right. Mm-hmm. That's what struck me. He's a man of character. He's a Christian. He's a husband. He's a father. He's successful. And he was running for the right reasons. Scott's old. He's really old, right? I mean, at that point in my life, I'd be worrying about how many rounds of golf I'm getting in. But he's going to take on this massive thing and run for governor. I said, you know what? He's doing it for the right reasons, and I actually think he can win in Minnesota because I don't think a typical Republican can win in Minnesota. Right? We've seen that movie 100 times, and so I said, I'm going to support this guy. And when I started following him, I saw that this was what we all talk about, an organic grassroots movement. A couple hundred people would be at an event, and they were all just like me. They'd never really been involved before. Like he was getting people. Right. I think COVID was part of it, but he was getting these first timers. They were connecting with him. He was connecting with them. And I thought, man, this is like real. This movement is real. And so I was just trying to do the best I could to support him. And then after a while, he came and asked me to be his running mate. And first I said no, because I was like, I don't even know what the lieutenant governor does, but I'm pretty sure it's not me. But then he came back and we talked about it a lot. And, I kind of like the way that I like the way that he positioned it. Scott's, Scott, he's not an ego guy. There's no ego.
It's crazy.
And
for a doctor, you would think a doctor would have a lot of ego, right? Because especially when you're running a practice. But he's like one of the most genuine guys I've ever met.
Right.
Honestly.
I mean, he's probably the smartest guy in any room that he walks into, but you would never know it. Treats everybody the same. He's an incredible human being. And I said, well, I could be teammates with this guy. I'd be proud to run with him. And so, I thought, and you know what? He's taken the plunge. He's put himself out there. He's taken the arrows. I kind of thought, I can do that. If he's doing that, I can do it. And quite frankly, and I don't want this to sound braggadocious, but I'm kind of built for that. Like, it doesn't really bother me that much what people that don't know me, what they say or think about me.
Yeah. Have you always been that way, or is that something that professional sports kind of prepared you for?
It was a little bit of both. When I grew up, I was the short, fat kid. I got picked on or bullied or whatever. I don't want to say bullied because bullying's a serious thing, but back in the 80s, we didn't call it bullying, right? We kind of just called it growing up.
Sure.
But I remember developing some kind of mental toughness through that. And I also think, I was very fortunate to be raised by two parents who took me to church, and I learned about God and that he made me, and, he had a special plan for my life. And so I've kind of always had that assurance that, everything's okay. Everything's going to be okay. And so, after, I had to convince my wife a little bit to let me, because I've taken her on some adventures now, but I was like, these normally work out. Remember, you didn't want to move to Baltimore, but that worked out okay.
Yeah.
And so when she said yes, I said, all right, let's go full speed ahead, Scott, and see if we can do it.
Along the same vein of you're making these transitions, right? You go from NFL, then I think for a while, were you the president of like football operations or something like that?
I worked in the NFL league office for 2 years. Yep.
And then you decide you're back in Minnesota, you're starting the school, and now all of a sudden COVID hits and now you're jumping into politics. To that end, up until the moment that you jumped in politics, sure, you probably had some criticism, right? Sports writers or, things like that can be brutal. But tell me about what you've experienced since you've announced your political beliefs from people that knew you, that you had interacted with. Tell me, what's that been like?
People that I knew before, and now, and they're on the other side of the aisle.
Let's say they're not your friend or whatever, but like they're people you interacted with that, you had cordial conversation. Have there been changes? I'm going to be, just throw it out there. I listen to Paul Allen, and
you should not do that.
Right. And so like,
I love you, PA.
Right. Like have the Birk bit, but I hear a difference in the way that they talk to you. It's almost, so I'm curious if my intuition is somewhat, correct on that. So can you tell me, have people treated you differently since you announced?
Oh yeah, no, definitely some people. And there's been things where, I'm not into like outing people, but
you don't have to say
events that I would have been invited to before. And I was like, oh no, you can't come anymore because this is, and I get it. I get that the conversation around politics is not exactly healthy or sane sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I get uninvited to things, I'm very like I used to do a lot of public speaking. I mean, I still speak in public now every day, but going to companies and talk about leadership and teamwork and those types of things. And then when I just assumed, listen, I'm just a citizen. I'm running for office. This is just one thing I'm doing. I figured that the business would continue. I have employees. I declare for office, and all of a sudden, like 90% of the businesses can't have me come speak to their employees anymore because I'm running for office. But I have to believe because I'm running for office as a conservative, as a Republican.
Well, I mean, you politicized a cheeseburger. Right?
No, I see.
mean,
that's what I mean. Cheeseburgers should not be political, right? No, but you know what? To me, I get it. I get it. I'm not saying, I don't want to say people like, hell, you need to be more courageous. Don't give in to cancel culture. I respect that you don't want to be susceptible to criticism or blowback. I'm respectful of that. Do I think? I mean, I don't I don't think we should live in fear of cancel culture. I don't. I think that's how you beat cancel culture is you just don't acknowledge that anybody can cancel you. But it might be different, when you're a retired NFL football player, right?
Sure.
Some people they're worried about losing their jobs or whatever. So I get it. It's just, I mean, I kind of learned a long time ago too. You should only really focus on the things that you can control. I can't focus. I can't control the way other people think or what they say or what their boss will think. So, I mean, I just kind of brush it off and move on. And most of the time, it's about that. That's that simple.
They're concerned that their image is going to be hurt. And so, to kind of the point that you already alluded to, if you had announced as a Democrat candidate, I don't think you would have had the same. I think that people would have been more inviting. And it might have even actually been like, they wouldn't talk about your politics, but they'd be happy to kind of promote your quote unquote brand. So to that point, have you had anybody, again, I don't want you to say names. I want people to, remain your friends. Have you had anybody that's come to you in private and said, man, I'm with you, but dude, I can't, like, publicly.
Oh,
yeah.
A ton.
Yeah.
A ton.
How does that feel, man?
I mean, these people are my friends. And so old teammates, and so it's like, hey man, I get it.
Yeah.
We've all got a role to play in this. Okay. So this is my role. It doesn't mean that everybody else has to join in. So I understand. Do I wish, more people would be a little bit more public or yeah, sure. I mean, that would be great, but that's just not the way it is. And that's, again, it's okay. Nothing I can really do about it. I'm not gonna blow up in somebody's face or call them out.
Yeah,
It's just be like, okay, that's cool. And
was it shocking to you?
I am surprised at, it has been, especially for certain guys and gals.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit surprised, but I say, okay, just make sure you go vote November 8th. That's the most important thing.
You hit on a point that I've said for a very long time is that, you'll never be able to control what people think about you. You should live your life based off of the values and principles that you have. I myself am a man of faith, and that's the only person that's going to actually judge me. So as long as I live to the values and characters that I believe are correct, and I'm not harming other people, it doesn't matter because you could, honestly, in this, we'll call it an experiment. You as a person haven't changed. You just have announced that you're running for office, and there's people that think that you are an evil person, but there's nothing you can do to change that. So I think you come into this already understand that probably makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, but this is the thing, like I try to teach my kids, right? Because on kids and social media, and it's all this, it's all this judging, and they say, the things they say to each other online. I mean, we ever talked like that to each other,
you'd be tussling.
I mean, you'd be squaring up, that's just the way it was. But this is what I try to teach my kids. It's like, hey, you can't worry about what other people think. You got to do your thing. Don't be a light in a dark world. These things. But then they see all these adults doing it, like the kids are watching, right?
Yeah.
And my kids, they're on social media. I say, listen,
Twitter's insane.
I say, don't go on Twitter. Don't look at my other accounts. I mean, I don't even know what accounts I have, right? Some of them, I don't even have these platforms. But once in a while they go and I was like, guys, we can't worry about that. And you're right. It's like, how do you live your life, your values? We're supposed to, I think we're here to do whatever the will of God is for our lives. And so I go back to that. But this is the thing with it's generally just disappointing how the adults are acting because our kids are watching.
Yeah, 100%, man.
As lieutenant governor, let's talk a little bit about policies that you would like to see or something that you would champion for all of Minnesota, right? You're going to have to bring everybody together. And what are those, that picture looks like for you?
Yeah, I think it's, the thing I've learned is going through this, it's like, man, this state government, it's big, right? There's a million different things, and maybe that's why nothing ever gets done. I would say, my passion issues, and number one is education. For me, education, getting a good education changed my life. It really did, and I think that it's a way up we talk about so many of the marginalized communities. I think we can just look at the data and say, the education system, it's not working well enough for enough people. Half our kids can't read or write at grade level. 70% of Black and Hispanic kids can't read or write at grade level. We're setting these kids up for miserable lives. I think school choice has to get done. I think you look at where it's in other states that have done it. They've had wonderful results for the students who have left the public school system, but also for the public schools. They've actually the performance of those students has gone up as well.
Yep.
Almost 100% of the time.
Yep.
So it's like, education, this whole idea of public education and education funding is supposed to go towards educating children. It's not there to protect or prop up a certain institution or a certain union. So we need to have school choice, because if you're against school choice, the only question I have for you is, why don't you want kids to be the best they can be?
Yeah, Minneapolis is even worse, right? Only 9% of Black students in Minneapolis are reading at grade level.
Like, why are we not outraged by that?
Right. That's
Republicans.
that's insane.
Why is that even a partisan thing? Why are we not outraged?
And I have a TikTok. I have almost 100,000 followers, and I like to make content based off of media narratives. And I was even kind of shocked, man. When I'm going through and I'm looking at the price per pupil, the only thing that you can say to someone is, the amount of money that's been going into the Minneapolis public school system has been increasing. The price per pupil keeps going up. Student enrollment has been going down. Proficiency is dropping. And so if you've tried to throw as much money as possible at it, why don't you maybe try something different and give school choice a chance?
And this is what makes me so mad. We know who I think they're the biggest donor to the Tim Walz campaign.
Oh, yeah.
It's the teachers union.
Yeah, Minnesota Education. Yeah.
And so we're literally sacrificing kids' academic careers, if we want to put it that way, at the altar of politics. Like, to me, that is just not acceptable. I mean, that's just like, there's right and wrong, and sometimes it's not exactly black and that's just wrong.
Right.
That's 100% wrong.
We'll just start out by going to some of these areas, these low income areas where they're asking for school choice. So when are we going to start listening to the people that actually need the help?
Yeah.
In this kind of situation?
Yeah. So, you do Main Street with Matt, and I know that you had went over to North Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I know that you have the presentation of what you're putting out there. Time is finite. You have to be able to put together. But, when you're talking to people not on camera, is there a desire to maybe hear more from Republicans, more than you thought there might have been?
Yeah. I mean, I've been over there a lot because I'm just like, okay. And I remember obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, I'd been in North Minneapolis in a long time. So first day I went over there, and a reverend took me around, and, we're driving around, and it's, you just can't believe. I'm like, this is 15 minutes from where I live.
Yeah.
And there's every other street corner. There's a white cross and a memorial for someone that got shot, and boarded up businesses, and those businesses are open, but they're boarded up. And I'm like, I can't believe this is my city. This is our city.
Acceptable, tolerated.
Right. And so we drive around, and I say, okay, I said, I was asked two questions. I say, what about racism? I haven't heard you say racism yet. And there was like, there's no racism over here. Like, yeah, there's racism, other
exists,
places,
right? Yeah.
But they're like,
it's not their concern.
Yeah, they're like, listen, we got white people, we got Mexicans, we're all just struggling. Like, we're in the struggle together. And then I say, okay, then let me just kind of boil it down this way. Why do you keep voting Democrat? And they say, well, that's easy. You guys stopped showing up here 30 years ago. You just gave up. They said, at least Democrats come around once every 4 years, and they lie to us, and we just think, well, hopefully this time they're not lying. And I thought, again, and you get back to sort of your own personal values and character, and it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, I can't. It's just not acceptable. And I wouldn't like myself if I went over there and, said some things, or I just said, forget it. Those, they're not going to vote for us anyways. Let's go focus somewhere else. So I've been spending a lot of time over there, and I hope they believe Scott and I when I say we're not, we're here now. We're going to stay here, and we're going to really do the best, put the best effort forward to try to fix some of these things over here that have been going on for decades.
On this podcast, on a previous episode, on another episode, we talked about our frustration of interacting with the Republican Party. Now, I am an MNGOP diehard, right? since 2006, I've been a delegate to every state convention. I've been a state central delegate. I was the chair of my BPOU. All these different things. But the thing that you and Scott are doing is you're saying, you know what, there is a desire, and even if the political wonks, the wannabe Karl Rove say, don't waste your time there. I think that it speaks volumes that you are saying we need to do something, because if we care about people, we can't just let them, spin in the wind, because we're only going to get 15% out of there. And it's like, that's such a defeatist mindset, because as you said, and I've heard this so many times, it's because Republicans don't show up. So when you show up and you do the work, you're going to make an impact. And I think it's because you care about people. And for you, when you're out there and you're building these relationships with people, how important is that to you, not just as a candidate, but as just a human being that sees something?
Yeah. First of all, and I'm not an MNGOP animal. You got to pick a side, right? I'm obviously I'm a Republican, but I hear about a lot of these things that have been going on in the Republican Party or haven't been going on, and I said, well, shame on Republicans.
Yeah,
that's their bad. That's our bad. That was wrong. But I got to tell you, talking to people in North Minneapolis and having the real conversations, the pride that those residents have in North Minneapolis. I mean, there are people over there doing God's work every single day. They've got pride. They've got hope that things are going to get better. I've met, living saints over there. And to your point, we're not having political conversations. Just, we walk around, we talk a little bit. We have meetings with leaders and we do the political stuff, but then you just meet people and you talk to them one-on-one and just human being to human being. And when I've left North Minneapolis, it's like this weird mix of, part of me is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is our town. But then the other part of me says, there's amazing people here. I'm uplifted.
And you want to get back there.
And you want to get back there. I'm going back. We're going there. Today's Tuesday. I'm going there Thursday. I'm going there Saturday. It's, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's I'm excited and inspired when I go to North Minneapolis.
From a political strategy perspective, because again, this is where I come from. I've long explained that if you actually put in the time and effort, there is this opening. And in Minnesota, I'm going to bring up the stat that I brought up before. Black men, 38% of black men in Minnesota voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Yeah, that's a huge opening. They didn't vote because of the Republican. They voted because they saw their perception of what Donald Trump was doing, that they agreed with it. And so you have that to work on if you put in the time and the energy. And so it's great that you and Scott, you're outside of the box,
they want
man.
Change.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You guys really want to do something special and important for the people of Minnesota.
Yeah, I was thinking, I thought, I heard this once, you measure a society by how well they treat, the least, if you will, the marginalized, the ostracized. And so North Minneapolis has kind of become the place, right, where we talk about that's the, the hardest part of Minneapolis. Well, so, if that's how we're going to be judged, then, what can we do, right? We have to do something. And I do think, because Scott and I are not institutionalized in this sort of political way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We got some ideas that we're still talking about, where the people who are, they're like, well, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
Why not? Well,
it's just never been done.
Well, they're talking about, budget. I'm like, hold on, budget. We essentially have an endless supply of money. Okay. The budget's $52 billion, biannually. And by the way, there's $12 billion in surplus money. So don't tell me we don't have $500 million.
Yeah.
Well, I was I think we got a lot of programs that aren't working, or money that's just disappearing, i.e. feeding our future. I think if don't tell me we don't have the money to try to do something here.
Right. Matt, talk a little bit about the crime. People that you're talking to right now, some of your ideas for that. We had Scott on earlier. He gave some of the 10-point plan. First of all, your support for law enforcement. I also want to know what kind of reform you would like to see in law enforcement as well.
Well, the biggest thing is, right, I kind of look at it as, and maybe Scott said it the same way, you know, three-legged stool: prevention, enforcement, and rehabilitation, right? So prevention, I think that goes to like, how about, you know, stable communities? How about like home ownership? How about good education, right? Like that's the best. Let's give kids a chance when they grow up. Enforcement. I mean, that's the police officer's job. Enforce the laws that we have. We obviously don't have enough cops right now. Why don't we have enough cops? I mean, I think it's real simple. I think because you saw our leaders not stand with the police during the riots. You can tell, obviously better than me, Jai. I mean, I know a lot of police officers, but I know you ain't doing the job for the money. I know you ain't doing it for the glory. You're doing it because you want to serve your community. And so if you're not appreciated and you're not supported, I totally get why I know a lot of cops that retired early because they're like, I'm not doing this.
Well, that's why I'm happy to see that the MPPOA endorsed you and Scott. I don't think there's the majority of police, I should say, in this state will not be voting for Governor Walz. I think I can say that pretty confidently with what happened after George Floyd with the civil unrest, and then just being abandoned, and then continuing on that with his comments at the state fair saying that was the best advice that he got from law enforcement professionals. To me, that just makes you want to, scratch your head and where did that come from? And he hasn't said it yet. It would be great if you could debate at some point and ask
Could
him.
you make that happen, please?
I saw this on I was watching KSTP on like Sunday.
And the image?
The image
Yeah, that was great.
It has, like the debate night or whatever, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then it's just Scott because Walz is like, nope. And it's just funny because they showed it, man. And it's just like, the dude is, in my opinion, he's scared. I know from a political perspective, what they want to say is, oh, we're so far ahead. We don't need to give Scott any additional airtime, but they're scared, man. They're scared to be held accountable.
Yeah. But, listen, I don't say this. I think this is the honest truth. I mean, Tim Walz and Peggy Flanagan, they can't run on their record, right? They can't run on what's gone on the last 4 years.
No,
so if they go up on stage, like which would happen at Farm Fest when Scott and Governor Walz debated, it was Governor Walz took a beating. So of course he's not coming back.
Is there anything on the schedule for you and Peggy Flanagan?
Nope. She said on the radio, she was asked point blank a couple months ago on Jason DeRusha's show, she said, will you debate Matt Birk? She said, yes. He said, you will? She said, oh, yeah, you betcha, in her best Minnesota accent. And that was in June. And she will not schedule anything with me either. But I just want to just get back to your law enforcement question. And so, I've always looked at it like this. I'll go back. Denny Green, who, man, Denny was a wise
force of
man.
nature.
Oh, and so Denny was from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So he would always talk about Harrisburg wisdom. It's kind of that common sense wisdom that might be a little uncommon. But he was a genius. And I remember my rookie year, he said, men, I'm the leader of this team. That means my number one job is to create the environment that you come to work in every day. It's not about, because we got offensive coordinator, we got guys, they'll draw plays, they'll call the plays. We got guys that'll lift the weights for you, or with you. My job, the most important thing I can do is create the environment that you come to work in. And I think what you saw during the riots and Tim Walz not stand with law enforcement and let, the rioters do what they did because I think he was worried about the political blowback from his party. Yep. He created this environment where criminals became emboldened, kind of this lawlessness that's still going on. And there's kind of this, like, that's the culture. That's the culture in Minneapolis, And then you don't have enough police officers to respond to calls. So I think the most important thing Scott and I can do is stand with law enforcement and say, no, this is Minnesota. We don't let the bad guys win. We don't let the bad guys in. We have laws. We're going to enforce them. And then we're sure as heck going to have judges and DAs who are going to, abide by mandatory minimum sentences, which I must not be real good at English because I thought mandatory minimum sentence meant that was the mandatory minimum. But you see, I think it's 40% of the time on violent offenses, you've seen judges sentenced down.
Yeah, right.
Like, what are we doing? Like, people can just do whatever they want.
Well, I'm saying officers in Hennepin County metro area going to other counties because they don't want to be associated with this nonsense of the revolving door and not holding people accountable. But I do want to ask you though, part of moving law enforcement together and being a better profession, what are some of the reforms you would like to see with law enforcement?
I mean, listen, I'm of the opinion that 99.9% of the time, right, the police officers do a great job, right? And it's the 0.1. And I hear from the citizens that I was just in downtown Minneapolis today, and we're talking about crime, and there's this, which George Floyd thing was awful and terrible, but that gave this idea out there that there's rogue cops doing these things all the time, right? Yep. I mean, and every police officer I've talked to, has said that, like, obviously we're trying to do our best. We're humans. Are there a couple bad apples? Sure. I mean, absolutely there are, right? I probably can't say I can't say their names, but talking to law enforcement leaders, right? Like they want the best training possible. They want transparency. They will admit when mistakes happen. But I think what you've seen, the problem is when mistakes have happened, mayors, governors, they've sort of
muddy it.
Yeah, and they've turned it into us against them versus we. And so I think that when I talk about Scott and I, changing that culture, and I mean we have some, I think leadership crisis or I mean, how many police chief jobs are open right now in the metro area? I mean, this is like a month. I think there's like 11. Yeah. I mean, we need, first of all, we need leaders, right? You need the right leaders in those seats, and then have these people tell us what they need. But it's with the lack of officers right now, we obviously need a huge recruitment effort, huge training effort, but then a collaboration between Minneapolis and the surrounding communities, those forces to come together to make sure we have enough police officers on the streets, which we just don't right now.
What would you say to an officer right now that's in that family dilemma of should I leave this profession?
I would beg him to stay. Honestly, I'd put my arms around him and say, like, we need you. Like, what you are doing is significant. I know this isn't a job. It's not even a career. Like, it's bigger than that. This is a vocation. And we love you for choosing it. And we really need you to stay. And I don't think do Minneapolis and St. Paul police officers need to get paid a little more? Absolutely. Like, can we ever pay them enough? No, right? It's kind of like teachers, right? But I think it even just goes beyond the money. It's not, I don't think they just want the money. I just think they want the appreciation, support, and respect. I mean, when I grew up, cops were the good guys. Like, there was no, and I say, oh, you're a white guy, you grew up. Yeah, I mean, okay, I get that. All of my interactions with police officers were pretty positive. I will say though, but when I grew up, there was, as a kid, there was a lot of, officer friendly coming to my school, right? Like, the cops are the good guys, right? They're the good guys. I know now and that's where I grew up. Maybe in some communities it's not like that. In the media, it certainly doesn't seem to be like that.
They don't help.
No, they rarely do. But I think that we just need to let these men and women know how much they're appreciated and how much they're loved, and listen to what they I know we're putting a lot on police officers, right? I mean, with the mental health crisis in this country, police officers, there's a lot going on. I mean, again, Jai, I feel like this would be like if you were telling me about what it's like to play football, Jai. I'd be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But
you just did whatever Randy Moss told you to do.
When Randy said, hey, Birk, this one's going deep, I knew I'm going to block I'm going to play as hard as I can on this play, because if Randy's running deep, chances are that good things are going to happen here. But it's complicated. It's messy out there.
So one of the things that I think the media and a lot of people don't want to touch is that when we talk about law enforcement and where things are, people want to explain it away and say, it was the pandemic, everyone's having this. And I don't disagree with that sentiment that doesn't have an impact. But here's the truth. A lack of leadership and an affirmation. We basically, as a society, have to be able to come back and say, here's what law enforcement does. This is what the institution of law enforcement is. And we have to be able to get back to honoring that institution. Until we do that, you are not going to solve this problem, because the institution right now is under assault. And so if you are able, if the good people of Minnesota decide that you are worthy of lieutenant governor and that Scott is worthy of governor, are you going to bring that culture back to Minnesota?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we talk about. The leader creates the environment or creates the culture, if you will. And sorry, there's two things I want to say. One, well, yeah, look at the people in North Minneapolis brought the lawsuit against the city council because the force is understaffed.
Listen to the communities that need law enforcement most.
Now, yeah, you talk to some people out like where I live, who are left leaning, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, cops are the problem." This and that. It's like, really? Because the people in North Minneapolis, they want more cops.
Yep.
So maybe they're not the problem. So, and I heard this was a great line is in the Somali community and talking about politics and race, and I just want to see where people are at and race. He said we don't care if the cat is black or white. We just want to make sure the cat catches the mice.
Yeah.
And again, they just want to be safe. Like, is there a more basic function of the government than to keep its citizens safe?
Like, that's like kind of the number one thing, right?
Yeah. So then it all stems from there, right? Like, if you're a high crime state like we are now, businesses aren't going to come and invest in those communities, right? Or they're going to, they're not going to, you're going to have less. I mean, do you think any conventions are coming to Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis next summer?
Soon?
Probably not. That hurts the restaurants. That hurts the hospitality. That hurts everybody. So we got to get that. We got to get it fixed and back to where Minnesota is like a safe, clean, urban area. But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight.
So I think that the lack of leadership that is coming right now from the Democrats is because they bet, and this is what's so crazy to me, is that they bet on this idea that somehow this restorative justice movement was actually going to work. I think there are some people that truly thought that if you defund and get rid of police and you have more mental health workers out there, that you're solving the problem of crime and criminals. And it's so disconnected from reality, because I grew up around a lot of criminals, and I know that criminals in general want to take advantage of other people.
Sure.
That's just, it's a mindset. It's like, you don't have to go and be a criminal. In the United States of America, you do not have to be a criminal. That is a choice that you make. Now, if you open up the horizon when they're younger and try and give some more avenues, but once you got to a certain point, you continue to make those decisions. But that's the problem. That's the disconnect, is that Tim Walz attached himself, and Peggy Flanagan believes this, that somehow you can decriminalize crime by being more relaxed and easier and all these different things.
Well, we tried it that way.
We tried, and this is the
we're in the middle of that. How's that going?
Yeah, and this is what the conclusion is. So that's why I keep on saying is that there has to be an actual force from the leadership to say, we're done doing this stuff. I don't want to hear any of this. We need to keep our people safe. And I think that you and Scott are the only ones that can do that. I kind of wanted to switch gears just a little bit, unless you had any other thoughts on this.
Can I say one thing to that? Yeah, what people forget is that, we don't talk about the victims of crime. And I guess the thing that really makes me mad, and I say mad, is that seemed like there was a political opportunity there for the left, right? Yeah, let's talk bad about the cops. Let's because these are base, or these communities, then that'll resonate with them and that'll get us more votes. Mm-hmm. But and they're even backing off it now, right? But defunding the police is not the right thing to do. And that how's that working out for us? Not so good. But they've never talked about the victims. The other thing too is that when somebody is charged with a murder, it's the state of Minnesota versus that person. Like, it's a crime against society too. And again, so we're not talking about the victims' rights. We're not talking about society. We're just talking about the criminals' rights, if you will. Which, when you don't, society works. We got rules. You don't follow the rules. You don't deserve to have some of those rights. You lose some of those rights. I mean, Jai, you tell me. I mean, and this is what how many people in the revolving door, right? It's like a majority of the violent offenses committed is by a relatively small number of people. Not to oversimplify, right? But if we could pull off,
in general, right? I mean, I got to give a shout out to Twin Cities Crime Watch. I mean, they do a great job of putting out the information of people that are reoffending. we see it daily, and it's the frustration, and that's some of the frustration leading officers out the door.
Yeah.
So we have to put a stop to that, and we need to put people in those positions. I'm watching the Hennepin County attorney's race very closely. We have to have somebody in that office that wants to do their job and prosecute. When you talk about victims, when I was running for Hennepin County Sheriff, that was my compass. Do I put victims first? And I would always, check myself and make sure I was doing that. And I didn't really care what other people thought, as long as I was making sure we were talking about victims. And you talk about North Minneapolis and about going there, and it energizes you, and you talk about that community. So you only want to help. I mean, you want to be a part of it, because there's so much culture there and history and about this city and about the state that we need to advocate for the high crime areas like North Minneapolis. There's great people there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that, when we talk about crime, the way that the media and the left likes to portray it is that you're just trying to scare the white suburbans, right? Like it's so disingenuous when they frame it that way. And this poll came, I don't know, you probably saw it, that asked people, do you feel like crime has gone up? And like, it was something ridiculous. It was like, I think it was like 70% of people said they feel like crime has gone up. And then the second question was, do you feel safe walking in your neighborhood at night? And it was complete opposite. Like 80% of people said, yeah, I feel safe walking at night. And so the way that they tried to kind of put this narrative is that, well, people they think that crime is bad, but they feel safe where they are. I actually have a different opinion on it. I think that people want to, like, no one wants to crap on where they live, right? Like where you're from in St. Paul, like your neighborhood, it's like, we got the best neighborhood, right? And you do know people. But I think there's that. But overall, I think this narrative continues to get spun and pushed that crime's not that bad. They're overblowing it. And the truth is, like, there's victims. Go and talk to the victims. Go and talk to the people that are actually affected by crime. And this is the truth. The people that are most victimized are Black and brown people. And so when someone comes out and says, you're just trying to scare white suburban women to voting for Republicans, it's like, no, we're just trying to tell the truth so we can actually save Black and brown lives by having something change in our system that doesn't happen. Even statistically speaking, the number one cause of death for men, Black men, from infancy 1 to age 44 is homicide. That is the number one cause of death. And this is something that has recently occurred. This hasn't like been this way forever, but this is something that has to change. And this is what actual having law and order and rule of law. I think that, yes, you can get to a point where you're over policing,
sure,
right? But that's not been the case in Minnesota. When you look at the jail population, like the state of Minnesota, we got room.
I think it's the third lowest incarceration rate in the country.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, I mean, I just got here 5 minutes ago, but it's like, and kind of let's see, we don't have enough officers, right? We have low incarceration rate and crime's high. I think I see some of these dials that we should be turning, right? It's not rocket science.
It's crazy. I wanted to ask in regards to your family, right? You're running for office. And, things have to be different for them because maybe even like your wife, she's maybe has friends and people that she's interacted with socially that, in the same way that you get that.
The damn Facebook. Facebook is ruining some of her friendship. Yeah.
So like how do you deal with that with your family? Because it had to be a family decision. And I say that to anyone that I know that has run, because I know so many people that have run and that have won, that it's a family decision. How does your family handle, you being in the political arena?
I think pretty well. There's times where, we get a little tired and you just might read something online that just strikes you the wrong way, but pretty good. And that's really the only thing I can complain about, or the downside to this running, is it's just too much time away from my family.
Yeah.
But we're in the home stretch. I told them, hey guys, one more month, we can do this. But that's also, we always sit around and you hear people say, well, I wish we had better candidates, right? Well, let me tell you this. There's only about 1% of the people that can actually run Because running for office is like 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah, 100%.
So you can't really have a job. Unless Scott Jensen does, but I don't think he sleeps.
He does not. He told us.
He's crazy. It's like 2 full-time jobs running for office. And then, all the time away from your family and all the stuff that's going to get said about you. I mean, the actual, the group that you get to select from is very, very small.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know. I mean, I could blame the Democrats for it, but it's everybody's fault. That the system is set up this way, and it's unfortunate. But meeting people, learning things. I mean, it's been an incredible experience for me, and I think my family too. Like we're starting to. My daughter changed her major to political science.
Really?
Yeah, she's like, what
That's
the heck?
awesome.
I mean, she didn't really like what she was majored in before. I don't know. She's like, yeah, what the hell? Do poli sci. But so we've had great conversations about some issues, and so we're going to come out on the other end better of it, regardless of whether we win or lose.
So here's one of the last questions I have for you. You've met a lot of people, right? Do you feel that regardless of what happens, you win or you lose, these relationships you've built with people, how do you think that's going to affect basically the rest of your life?
Well, I mean, I've certainly made some friends that'll be lifelong friends now. And that's not because of our political alignment, but, it's like playing football or maybe when you're on the force, right? When you're in the battle with somebody, whatever that battle is, you get close, Right. And when you're grinding with people, you get close. And, I know I'm not running for politics. It's not like serving on the force or anything.
Well, you talk about uniform, right? When you wear that uniform, it's really races out the door.
Yeah.
You are one, and you can talk about anything.
And that's the thing where I'm sure someone's going to blast me for saying this, but I got to tell you something. Like, I played in the NFL. Okay, so you show up and you start with like 100 alpha males, and you got to whittle it down to 53. And you got, black guys, brown guys, fat guys, skinny guys that grew up rich, played with guys that grew up homeless, Christians, Jews, Muslims, straight guys, gay guys. Do you know in my 15 years in the NFL, do you know how many like sensitivity trainings or DEI sessions we sat through? None. Not a one. Now it might be different these days.
Sure.
But we never had to. Like, none of those things were ever an issue because it's like, okay, we're all here for one reason. Like, this is the job. There's the goal.
Right.
Let's go do it. And so you never even have, it's like never an issue. And so to me, and that's just, listen, that's my experience. Okay. That's my life experience. So now when you I see a lot of this, the talk in the media or wherever, about equity. What were they talking about the other day? Oh, it was like climate change and equity.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell are we talking about?
Climate change, racial equity, because, you need to make sure that how climate change is affecting, the black community and poor people.
I mean, it's like, what are we talking about? Like, for some people, like race is everything. Sexual orientation is everything. And again, I'm just going by my life experience and how it's like nothing. It's like nothing. And so maybe the most rewarding moments of this campaign are when, it might be at an event. It might be when we're doing public appearance. It might be shooting main streets where you talk to somebody who politically we're not aligned. And you can see like they're kind of coming up, like they're ready to kind of tussle with you a little bit. Yeah. But after a few minutes, we walk away and it's like, okay, we don't agree on much. But it's like,
we're human beings.
They're kind of saying like, gee, you're not that bad. I'm like, you're not that bad either. Like we're human beings at the end of the day. We just see the world a little bit differently. And I think that's like God's thing, right? Like I'm putting you all here on earth. You guys gonna have to figure it out. Yeah. Like now figure it out. Do me proud and figure it out. And so hopefully that's
you talk a little bit about some of the rewarding parts about running. I got a question because when I was running for Hennepin County Sheriff, there was a time that you wish you would have not said a certain phrase or take back something, right? And one for me was I visited a encampment that housed the homeless, and I made a plea to people to bring firewood to help them, right? And because I just wanted to help in any way we could help. My phone blew up from firefighters saying, "What the hell are you saying? Bring firewood. You're going to burn down these encampments." And I go, all right, maybe not the smartest thing to say. My campaign manager was not happy about it either. But looking back, are there times during this campaign so far where you looked at your wife or somebody and said, "Damn, I wish I could take that one back"?
I mean, I haven't said anything like in spite or hate. Like I've said things, and of course they've pulled them out of context.
Yeah,
it wasn't meant, like even not to put it back on you, Jai, but you were saying like it was coming from a good place, right? It's just, okay. Oh, yeah, I guess it makes sense. I can burn it down, but I mean, like the worst thing that they can say about Scott Jensen and myself are that we're pro-life, right? So I do pro-life speaking all over the country. So they'll pull out of a 45-minute speech, they'll pull a 5-second sound clip and make it sound, and gets all the way to The View and Whoopi Goldberg. And I mean, sure, do I wish? Yeah, I guess I wish I would have made that joke or said that phrase because they pulled it out and used it against me. But at the same time, it was the greater context or what it was meant in was good. It's what I believe, and so I mean, I don't know that this whole. And that's what we do. That's what we all do, right? Is pull these sound bites out and play them and try to. And that's the side of politics where, man, it's probably been like this forever, and it's probably going to be like this forever. But hopefully, I mean, I'm hopeful that Scott and I have at least pushed the conversation. We've been honest. We've been very transparent. We've been very available. I mean, Scott, we walk around. I don't know if I should say that we never have security. I mean, we're just out. We're like out amongst the people.
Yeah,
now,
you're out there, the people, man.
I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about Scott. He's only about 150 pounds. I mean, he get whooped by just about anybody. But we've made ourselves available and really pride ourselves on having conversations. So maybe we've improved it, a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, of course I've said a lot of things. Most things that I regret, though, I said to my wife. Those are the things I'd love to really have back.
Yeah, those days when you're in doghouse. I have one final question for you. And this stems actually from a conversation that you and I had. There was, I think it was a Young Republican State Convention, and they had like the little VIP area. And I chatted with you for a second, and I asked you, and I kind of want to put this back to you again. When you consider your NFL career, right, and you're just taking a beating every game, right?
Well, I'm giving out the beating too now.
Well, yeah.
Thank you.
But your body gets, you're busted up or whatever. How do you feel the game of politics mentally compares to playing, football? Like, are you surprised at how different it is, or do you think one is more difficult mentally than the other?
Well, I think all toughness is mental toughness.
Okay.
Right. So, football teaches you have to be mentally tough, but what football also taught me was I can do more. We can all do more than we think we can. Mm-hmm. Right. You're like, oh, I'm sore. How am I going to get through practice? But coach is telling you you're going to do it. Your teammates are out there doing it. You're like, all right, we're going to find a way. We're going to find a way and do it. And you just do that over and over. And it's kind of the same with politics. It's just the grind. It's the grind. It's the discipline. So it's the same that way, but football's way harder than politics. Man, I wake up Monday mornings like I couldn't move, and I just feel like, oh my gosh, and especially after a loss, everybody says bad things about you anyways. So it's same as politics. But definitely prepared me, and again, it's kind of that focus on the process, do what you're supposed to do, focus on what you can control. That's what I learned in football, and that's kind of the same thing here, being a Republican candidate in Minnesota. We don't have the media, we don't have the money,
right?
So we're gonna outwork them, and we're gonna we're just gonna do the things that we can do, and I think it's working, and I mean, win or lose, I'll tell you, November 8th, and I think we're gonna win, but it's gonna be a lot closer than it has been in a long time, and I think that's because. I think that's because of Scott. Scott's done an unbelievable job. He's a tireless worker. He's indefatigable. I don't know if that's a word. I might have just made that up, but he's indefatigable. And myself, I think we put the time in, and we're going to do it from now until November 8th.
Yeah, man. I 100% support you and Scott. I actually supported Scott kind of after I had on the podcast that I do. Almost every candidate came on my podcast, and I talked to them, and Scott was like, where do you think you're at? And I'm like, I'll let you know, man. And every time I'd have a conversation with him, I already had a gut feeling, like, but I still wanted to see how everyone else was, you know. And just Scott, he right from the beginning, man, just spot on. And you know, when I came down to state convention and I helped give the endorsement speech, like it's just all these different things. And so I actually do think I'm very hopeful in Minnesota. I think that you and Scott are doing the work. The deck is stacked against you, but you two are out there grinding, and I actually think that you guys are going to win. And you know, you could call me a homer or whatever, you know, because I always think the Vikings are going to the Super Bowl every year too. But
You're
honestly,
that guy.
I'm that guy. But I honestly think that you guys have put in the work, and you're fighting the narrative, you're fighting the machine, and I think that a lot of good things are going to come.
And let me just say, it's not. Yes, we've done all that, but it's not us. I mean, it really is the people, the movement, the energy. We're just kind of the. Yeah, we're the two guys.
Yeah, you're the avatars of the people.
Yeah, but I mean, it really is. I think when COVID happened, I think a lot of people just said, we can't do this. And then they've seen the direction our state's going. And not everybody is like a diehard Democrat or a diehard Republican, right? There's a lot of people there in the middle. They might vote Democrat, they might vote Republican. A lot of times they don't even vote. I think this year, you know, it's a little bit different with what happened, with what we've been through. And so, it's truly a movement of the people.
I want to do one last silly thing. So
Can we give you a tattoo?
All three of us have a tattoo on the side of our arm. Yeah. Mine says "Free Kamara." I got this when I was 17 in Hollywood. What's yours say, man?
So mine's got 6 of my kids' names, and then my wife's middle name is Star, so it's got the star, right?
Nice.
This is how. But I have 8 kids.
Yeah.
So where are the other 2?
Yeah.
They're both 6 years old. Okay. I don't have them tattooed yet. And they're going to start asking questions. So
you got to get it,
November 9th, I'm going to get a tattoo.
Yeah,
there you go.
And what's your say, Jai?
I got a design. I got a Indian.
Oh, dang. You got like a whole thing.
So. That took some time right there.
Oh, you put us to shame, man.
So I fell asleep during it.
For real? You're like, oh, this ain't nothing. You know what? Thank you so much for coming on, Matt. It was a blast, man. We'd love to have you back again.
Yeah, sure.
You know, whooping it up. Now, one thing that I've been through before is a gubernatorial inauguration. So I will be happy to help do that. Maybe I'll be doing security for the MNGOP like I did before.
Security? No, man. If this, you know, you're celebrating with it.
But it'll be a great time. But again, man, I appreciate you coming on. Amazing conversation. Yeah. And I think you guys continue to do what you do. We got, what is it, like 3 weeks, three and a half weeks, something like that, until Election Day, and just keep pushing. And I think the people are going to speak, man.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, man.
Thanks for listening to Black and Blue with AK and Officer Jai. Have a great day.